It was actually a referral from you guys. I guess I won't say any names, but pretty intense individual. Well, he's actually not intense. He looks intense. And so me being a Christian guy, I just told a little bit of my story, and my relationship with God is the most important thing in my life. And so this guy, he has 666 tattooed on his neck, covering his entire neck.
Yep.
And so whenever him and his parents came to tour, it scared me a little bit. I'm like, man, I don't know if I want this vibe in my house.
Yep.
And I'm not kidding. This guy's getting baptized at Shoreline City Church this Sunday.
That's amazing.
With this podcast, what we're trying to do is have real, authentic discourse.
John, it's good to have you today.
Yeah, good to be here.
As you are probably aware, we are doing a podcast. This is our year of inauguration of it. It's called Treatment Redefined. And what we're trying to do is bring thought leaders in around the area of mental health, addiction, brain health, to really challenge the status quo on how people can get better throughout treatment. I think the areas we're going to talk about are areas that not a lot of people know a tremendous amount about, being interventions and being sober living. Now, I'm biased. I've worked with you a long time, but I think you run one of the best sober living houses that we've experienced in the course of the last 17 years. Patton House, you've got 4 different homes, all here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Yep, all in basically in Richardson. Yeah.
Okay. And give me a feel for how they're set up. Are they all male? Are there females involved? What's your approach with them?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I would say within the behavioral healthcare industry, there's a larger spectrum when it comes to levels of care within the sober living space than any other part of our industry.
Yep.
Meaning, on one end of the spectrum would be, Oxford Homes, which most people know about. So Oxford Homes are essentially governed by the people who live there. There's no staff oversight. And so then we're on the opposite end of that spectrum when it comes to accountability, structure, support.
Yep.
A large team of staff members who are essentially case managers.
That's right.
Holding these guys' hands through every step of the recovery process. And so it was actually after I'd done interventions for roughly a year and a half. Now, once again, I don't know the global numbers, statistics, but what I saw after a year and a half of doing interventions is the people who did not go into a structured sober living environment after residential treatment very rarely made it for very long, honestly. Granted, my interventions back then were on mostly young adults. And so I just saw the need for there to be a highly structured sober living, in Dallas. And so as far as my homes, there's just a ton of accountability. What that looks like is we don't take the confrontational approach.
Yep.
I mean, if anything, I'm very self-deprecating with the guys. I do a Tuesday group with our guys every single Tuesday, which is kind of an accountability group. We do a 3-hour staff meeting on Tuesday as well. And so I'm taking the notes from that 3-hour staff meeting of hey, man, I noticed you only went to a couple 12-step meetings last week.
Yep.
You're supposed to go to 4. And if it's the first time, it's a warning. But I'm very calm with people. And I'm like, look, here's what I tell parents is I can't guarantee results, but what I can guarantee is that if your son, or if I'm talking to a wife, if your husband comes to us, he will be working a mind, body, spirit program of recovery.
Yep.
And so, there's just, we actually geo-track all of the guys' weekly requirements. And so we have a sober living software called One Step.
Okay.
When the guys get a free gym membership to LA Fitness. When they go to the gym, they have to check in on the app. And so we not only know that they were there at least 3 days a week, we know how long they were there.
Yeah.
And so gym 3 days a week, they have to go to 4 12-step meetings a week. They have to check in when they go to a 12-step meeting. So then we know what meeting they were at, how long they were at the meeting, if they were there from beginning to end. It's mandatory that the guys are in individual therapy every single week, the duration of their stay. We do group therapy 3 nights a week. We do morning groups every Monday through Friday morning. But the real kicker is as well, going back to the spectrum in terms of levels of care, like a lower level of care, sober living. So there's the Oxford homes on one end of the spectrum, governed by the people who live there. But then a lot of the lower level of care, sober livings, which there's a need for it, due to cost,
Sure.
But a lot of those places, the house managers, they're not like paid employees. They get free room and board. They have a job, outside of the house. So, but with my program, the house managers, they're W-2 employees, paid a salary. They're not allowed to have a job outside of the house. But the main key is the program directors.
Yep.
So each of the 4 homes has its own program director, and that's his home base, is that one specific house that he's program director over. So he's essentially the case manager over, at any given time, roughly 8 guys. And so he's over there Monday through Friday, usual business hours, making sure guys are getting where they need to go, doing what they need to do. Hey, man, I see you've only been to the gym once this week. It's Friday.
Yep.
You got to go 2 more times. Or, hey, have you met with your 12-step sponsor this week? You got to meet with them in person at least once a week until you are working steps 10, 11, 12. And so it's really the on-site case managers, I think, that makes the biggest difference. And that's why they do the morning groups every Monday through Friday morning, is to start off the day on the right foot, make sure guys are getting where they need to go.
Yep.
Another key piece is making sure guys take their medication as prescribed. So all the medication is locked in a safe in the house manager's room. When it's time for guys to take their meds, house manager will open the safe, watch the guys, grab their pill holder, watch them take the meds. So we're not administering the medication, but the house manager watches them grab their pill holder, take the medication, put the pill holder back in the safe. And just that alone, honestly, I'm sure you're into, health and nutrition. I take a lot of supplements.
Yep.
If I did not have a pill holder, even with the pill holder, sometimes I'm like, wait, did I take Tuesday's fish oil, or I see a fish oil missing from that one, or whatever the case may be. And so simply guys taking their medication as prescribed goes a very long way. We've also become known as a place that can deal with pretty acute mental health, issues. In fact, 2 guys that we have right now, one of them's been sober for a little over 2 years. Another one has never had substance abuse issues. And so they're more with us basically to just try to become a functioning member of society, right?
And there's probably a big need for this. You and I had a conversation several weeks ago about a little concept kind of in this realm, but the idea of where's the chronically mental ill patient population? Where can they be? Because often they can't live at home. Yeah. Families have a hard time taking care of them, and sometimes they need a place to be able to go. Is there kind of a subacute mental health only type population that you feel like you can service?
I think there is definitely a need for long-term care of acutely, mentally ill population, really, severe schizophrenia, severe bipolar. And it's actually pretty sad, I guess circling back to my aunt, never really getting the care that she needed. But it is sad sometimes whenever we do get a guy who comes to us purely for mental health reasons, and we find them a job, and they're taking their medication as prescribed, and things are going well, and a family, mom or a dad will say, John, I wish you could just stay there forever.
Right.
And so, but yeah, we try to, set those families up for success in terms of trying to help them find some type of long-term, situation, but there's
really not out there. So kind of hitting on that, what's typically like a time frame that residents would stay with you? Like how long is there an episode of care, if you will, for sober living? What's like the time frame that people would be there with you?
So to my knowledge, pretty much any therapist in our field would suggest 6 to 9 months of structured sober living after residential treatment. Our average length of stay is around 6 or 7 months. And so it really does take, I think, that amount of time, for a guy to have a solid foundation, to be plugged in to the recovery community, going to the gym, working with a sponsor, in therapy, going to 12-step meetings. We do also have a strong spiritual component to our program in that I don't force guys to go to church. It's technically unethical, I believe, for a licensed clinician to force religion onto people.
Right.
And unfortunately, a lot of guys come to us with what they call religious trauma, which is very sad. That's even a term, but it's a thing, and so I don't want to force someone who's been abused either through the church or maybe through very legalistic religious parents over the years. I don't want to force that person to go to church.
But you have some avenues, some openings, right? If it's something they want to participate in or just re-engage, you have it available.
We have it available, and even to take it a step further, we do incentivize it. There's 2 really good services in Dallas that I truly believe in, and these are non-denominational Christian churches, very laid back.
Can I ask you which ones are they?
Yeah,
locally?
So one of the services we incentivize is called The Porch at Watermark Church.
Absolutely.
About 3,000 to 4,000 young people that go every Tuesday. And so oftentimes the message at The Porch, yes, it's biblically based, but it's more of a life message in terms of dating, in terms of substance abuse, pornography. And so I love that for our guys.
They take it head on, and they do it, I think, personally, in a wonderful way.
It's so great. It's so great. I mean, I've had guys come to us. Well, I'll get to that story in a second. And then the other one is Shoreline City Church, which is the church my wife and I go to. And so a lot of our older guys go there. And that's maybe what's important to note as well, is oftentimes, going back to the spectrum of sober living, a lot of sober livings, it's a mix of all different ages.
Yep.
And so what's really cool about us having the 4 houses is we're able to strategically put a guy in a house based on his age, his level of maturity. And so we have what we call our teenage house, which is generally guys who are like literally working on their high school diplomas, teenagers. And then we have 2 typical young adult male homes. And then we have what we call our older, more mature home. Okay. And so at the older house, that's when I started incentivizing Shoreline, because The Porch is generally for, teenagers, young adults. And so Shoreline is a really good one. But it was actually a referral from you guys. I guess I won't say any names, but pretty intense individual. Well, he's actually not intense. He looks intense. And so me being a Christian guy, I just told a little bit of my story, and my relationship with God is the most important thing in my life. And I pray over these houses a lot. And, because it's some interesting just guys that are in bondage, right? And so this guy, he has 666 tattooed on his neck, covering his entire neck.
Yep.
And so whenever him and his parents came to tour, it scared me a little bit. I'm like, man, I don't know if I want this vibe in my house.
Yep.
And I'm not kidding. This guy's getting baptized at Shoreline City Church this Sunday.
That's amazing.
This Sunday. He came in, and he honestly didn't even want to hear about God. He didn't you had to be like, I was like, hey, I'm not going to preach to this guy. And I don't preach to any of the guys, I'll trickle in, what I feel, the importance of what it looks like to have a relationship with God, because I've lived both ways. And he definitely didn't want to hear any of that. And so, I didn't force a guy to go to church, but because we incentivize it, and whenever I say incentivize it, is if the guys do go to either Shoreline on Sunday or The Porch on Tuesday, that counts as one of their 12-step meetings, and it also counts as their spiritual enrichment requirement. In order to be ethical and not force religion onto people, there's tons of other ways that they can fulfill the spiritual enrichment requirement. There's like a 12-step meditation group that meets once a week they can go to. They can volunteer at a nonprofit for an hour once a week, and we have had people take those options. We had one guy who, was a practicing Muslim who did the Muslim prayers, multiple times a day, facing the right direction, all these things. I wasn't trying to convert him to Christianity. I mean, we meet people where they're at. That being said, it is pretty cool that this guy was 666 on his neck.
That's remarkable.
No desire to have anything with God, have anything to do with God, is literally getting baptized on Sunday.
Yeah, it's absolutely remarkable.
It's wild.
No, that is a amazing story,
Very
actually.
cool.
I love it. Love that. So, as we're talking about, because I'm listening to you and I'm thinking about all of our experiences over the years of having patients leave residential treatment and then go into sober living, transitional living, whatever. There's different labels that get put on it. My experience, being very candid with this, is that and I advise families, I'm pretty direct with them on this, is that you need to be real careful about where you go, because we've had some experiences in the early days where it was a lot of kind of the self-run types of facilities. I know some are great, and some, they serve a really important purpose kind of in the spectrum of care here. But I really think the oversight and the accountability that's in place is absolutely vital. Otherwise, they can become kind of little drug dens in a way, and people can get in a lot of trouble. And so, listening to the way you've put your program together, there's a lot of accountability and oversight and structure. And I think that's in that time, having that time period post-treatment, that transition out of a somewhat of a bubble-like environment where you're building, I think, the foundational elements of recovery. You're now starting to kind of architect out really the house of recovery and how you're going to get your life back, get work, find your sense of purpose, regain maybe some of your spiritual connections. But you're establishing some really, really important things within a realm of accountability, which is key. It's just my opinion. I think it's absolutely vital. I'm curious, in your mind, where does sober living fit? Is it a post-residential level of care? Do you ever have people that come there, in lieu of residential care? What are kind of the distinguishing factors you see as to, no, I don't really think patients that need residential should be in a sober living. They should be post. I'm curious because I want to chat with you a little bit about some of the sober living facilities that have sprung up. A lot of them originated in Florida, and they're kind of starting to spread their seeds across Dallas-Fort Worth, are sober living atmospheres that are really manifesting as residential treatment. Often giving people, there's some impropriety, as you know, kind of in our space. You have to be a little careful. But you've got folks that are really giving sober living away for free, really to be able to bill out-of-network insurance at PHP and IOP levels of care at, absurd rates. And I feel like they're kind of taking advantage of that population. I'm just curious, in your opinion, have you run up against some of that? And how do you kind of keep the integrity of it? And where do you see sober living really fitting purposefully kind of in a continuum of care for an individual?
Definitely. So from day one, I guess I'll speak about us for a little bit and then touch on some stuff that definitely seems to be happening. I don't know to what extent. But for us from day one, I always had the hard line of someone needs to be in residential treatment before coming to us. I never wanted anyone in the field or in general anyone to think that I'm out there saying, hey, we're a substitute for residential treatment. There are things that happen in residential treatment that do not happen in sober living. The most specific thing is a residential treatment center is a closed campus.
That's right.
So someone needs to be in a closed-off environment, away from the temptations and opportunities of the free world, so to speak,
That's right, for a period of time.
For a period of time to get a true baseline of where this person is at, so that, meeting regularly with a psychiatrist, which I guess technically the places that may try to say they're a substitute for residential treatment might say, oh, well, hold on, we can have them meet with a psychiatrist each week.
That's right.
But really and truly, I think for me, that's the kicker. Is it like residential treatment is a true sabbatical, right? It's a chance for somebody to get out of the drama, the stress of, and having the freedom to walk to a liquor store, to walk to a vape shop, which I think everyone knows these days sells roughly, who knows, 10 to 15 different products that can get you high.
Absolutely. And
not only high, but probably mess you up more than if you got something that was illegal.
That's right.
With all the, synthetic THC, the variants of THC, all the psychedelics, the research chemicals. It is like the Wild West when it comes to these vape stores. And so it is really sad. It's interesting that you bring this up. So it was roughly 3 weeks ago. Our executive director, Austin Shook, he received a call from a mom who was very interested in our program. And based on the intake call, he said, well, ma'am, we would love to have your son, but he hasn't been to residential treatment. He needs to go to residential treatment to really get that foundation. Yeah. And to really, so they can do the assessments, find out what's really going on. And then he can come to us. But he needs at least 30 days of continuous sobriety from a residential treatment center and then come to us. And she said, oh, well, no names. This other place said that he could come there now.
Right.
And so Austin called me. He's like, hey, John, we're going to lose this guy if we don't allow him to come. And I was like, and I knew what I felt, but him being my executive director, I always want to value his opinion. I said, well, what do you think we should do? He's like, dude, I think it'd be unethical if we took him. We got to stick to our guns.
Right.
I said, exactly.
Yeah.
I was like, we're not a substitute for residential treatment. But it does happen.
It does happen, and you see it. There's different things that have happened over the years. But you have to be careful because the patient population is vulnerable. And, you've got families calling for loved ones, and they're desperate for answers. And so if you're not careful, you can be led kind of down some of the wrong paths. I've always appreciated the role that sober living plays because I think time in sobriety is really, really important. You can go into a residential treatment program and have the best therapeutic experience and go through the best family programming, get the best assessments done and get medicated properly if need be, and just have an amazing experience. But when you leave that environment is really when I think some of the most important work begins. And sober living provides, for those that can do it, sometimes the obstacle is really, I just can't be away, I can't go live somewhere else. And there's some probably legitimate excuses there. But my preference would be is that for particularly a lot of the younger adults, the ones that we see, I think it's a great just transitional period to put to work a lot of the things that you learned, while you're in treatment and allow some of that to soak in and kind of manifest in you. And then be in an environment with other like-minded individuals that are trying to get their life back and have time. There's really no substitute for time. We live in a day and age where we want everything so quickly. And one of the things that I've learned over the years with behavioral health in particular, you really can't short-circuit it. Even a lot of the outpatient programs are taking in people with high acuity and kind of spinning them in and out. Or, the model du jour for the last 10 years in treatment really has been, let's do detox stabilization and pair it with PHP IOP because it works for insurance and we can bill it. And we're going to get authorized and we can bill numbers with one therapist and move them through the system. The issue is that it's not helping a lot of people because you're trying to take something that takes time and you're rushing it, and they're not ready for that level of care to go back home. If you have been drinking for 20 years and you need to go into detox, you probably shouldn't be 5 days later going back home to the environment that may be part of the reason that you're having some of the issues. And then being expected to show up, 5 days a week or 3 days a week. It's kind of the dirty little secret is that it doesn't really work, but the system is set up that way in order to move people through. Sober living, I think, kind of transcends a lot of that in that it gives them a safe environment. There's a lot of, particularly the ones that you run, a lot of accountability and the necessary time. And I think when you can go through 30 to 45 days worth of concentrated, medical and therapeutic treatment at a residential level and then go spend, say, 7 to 9 months in a sober living atmosphere, and you're also getting continued treatment, individual therapy, group therapy, you're giving those individuals, I think, maybe one of the best shots for lasting recovery. That model works.
Truly, yeah, couldn't have said it better and could not agree more. And once again, that's based on my own market research, if you will, of the interventions, the families I've helped since 2009.
Yes.
Like, not every individual who goes to sober living makes it long term, but their chances exponentially increase. And in fact, the way I like to put it is whenever someone goes to a place like Enterhealth, a residential treatment center, then essentially when they walk through the doors, they're giving a tool belt. Mm-hmm. And while they're there in treatment, their therapist, their psychiatrist, their nutritionist, whoever it is, their personal trainer, whoever it is, they're giving them these tools.
Yes.
Hey, here's a tool that you need to use when you leave here. Mm-hmm. 9 times out of 10, if someone doesn't go door to door from residential treatment into sober living, they take the tool belt off. Right. When they get to the house, they put it in the closet, and maybe they intend to put the belt back on and to actually use the tools. But if they're not held accountable to using those tools that they learned while in residential treatment, then oftentimes they just don't use them.
I know.
And so, it's interesting.
You've got it. So, as we've been kind of talking, as we're kind of, bringing a little bit of this to close, what are you kind of looking at, in your organization moving forward? Do you see certain programming elements on the horizon that you want to integrate in? Do you want to have, do you want to branch out and have more of these? Is geography, you want to keep them kind of in Dallas? Just where's kind of your headspace on where you're trying to go with your homes? For me personally, because I have had that conversation, with my wife and with, some of the members of my team. For me personally, having the 4 homes is kind of a sweet spot for us. That being said, I operate as a CEO to the fullest extent of the word, right? So I'm hopping on Zoom calls with parents. I'm leading groups. Yesterday, I led groups from 2 p.m. until 7:15, 7:30 p.m., something like that. Yeah. And so me being so involved, I think if, a Marcus Lemonis type figure were to come in and why aren't you scaling? Scale. 4 homes for me is enough. I really like where we're at. I've constantly tweaked things over the last 12 and a half years to try to be the best that we can possibly be. Could I add a 5th home? Probably. But if I did add a 5th home, I think it would be more of a step-down house for guys who make it through our phase system, have been with us at least 6 months, are doing well, and then maybe they step down to a lower level of care home to where a little more autonomy.
A lot more autonomy. And so I could see us, possibly doing that, But
no, I like the perspective. I actually share it with Enterhealth. Is that, we weren't built to scale and try to take on 4 or 5 residential programs and, sell it upstream to somebody else who's going to, blow it up and sell it again. We really built it for the community. Yeah, it was something we wanted to do and do well. And I think how you set things up, I've said this before, even on these podcasts, is I think how you set things up initially dictates a lot of future decisions that you're going to make. It really shows what your motivation is. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing right or wrong about what I'm saying, but I think you get a little bit different level of touch and oversight when you set it up to do something really well and do it special, and you want to be great. If you're just growing for growth's sake, or you're just putting something together just to sell,
yes,
you're going to make a lot of interesting decisions along the way that might not necessarily be, particularly in our space, in the best interest of the patients. And I think if you can lead with, listen, we all have organizations we run, and at the end of the day, you need to be able to make a profit and keep the lights on and pay your people and invest in your properties. But you don't want to do it at the expense of delivering great care. And I think in our space, being residential treatment, sober livings, you can do well by doing really good. And keeping your eye on that ball, I think, is really, really important.
100%.
So, well, hey, John, this has been an absolute pleasure to have you on. I got a chance really to learn a little bit more about you today. I've known you for years, but can honestly say I think you're doing some really, really special work, and your life story is a testament to how successful you've been, and you should be real proud of yourself, and you've done some great work in this field.
Can't thank you enough, David, and likewise, like the functional medicine you guys are integrating at Enterhealth, I genuinely think anyone who has learned about what you're doing there, specifically with the functional medicine, is very excited about it, and I'm definitely one of those people.
Yep.
And so, we always have to be evolving.
We do.
And trying to do the best that we can to help the people that come our way.
That's
and
right.
So, thanks
right.
for the kind words. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure to have you here. We'll probably have you back on in the future. We'll talk a little bit more about this journey we've been on and bringing more of the integrative functional medicine to play. I think it's really the new frontier in how you're going to look at treating psychiatry in general and just helping people that suffer from addiction and mental health, helping them to get better.
Yeah.
So it's been a pleasure. Thank you, John.
Yeah, thank you.